Hey, good morning, good morning, good morning. Hello. How's everybody enjoying the ride this morning? I notice everyone seems very content. I think that's the word. I see a lot of happy contentedness amongst people. But yeah, so it's also a great day for some more talks. And I'm glad that the crew had a successful drill and decided to get back on the ship. So here we are. So, at this point in the voyage, we've met many of our speakers already, but it really is my absolute delight to reintroduce Charlie Duke. Charlie's going to give us a great talk here in a minute, but just to refresh your memory, Charlie's from Lancaster, South Carolina, and he joined the Naval Academy in 1957, and later got a master's degree at MIT, which he, as he told us earlier, was instrumental in him becoming a member of the Astronaut Corps in 1966. He was later selected for the Apollo program, and I don't know if you really covered this yet, Charlie, but of the, how many was it? Of the 9 missions to the moon, Charlie was directly and significantly involved in 5, not just as an astronaut, but as a key team member on the engineering and planning side and operations side of many of those missions. Some other interesting things about Charlie. I always like to find out about the human behind the man. And Charlie is an avid hunter, fisher, and used to be, him and Dottie, really avid skiers. They decided, in terms of risk management, to not ski so much these days. But I'm sure they've been enjoying being here in the snow. So, Charlie, it's my real pleasure to invite you to the stage. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Charlie Duke.
Thank you. Well, at my age, I'm going to sit down, or I'll stagger all over this stage if I didn't. Well, anyway, it's great to be here. I want to thank Daniel and Tristan for inviting us to here. And first, I'd like to introduce my precious wife of 61 years, Dottie. Why don't you sit down? And then my family's here. We have our youngest son and his family, and his father-in-law, and so they're here enjoying us too, and we're having a wonderful time. So it's been a blessing to have that part of the family here. So nice to also get a chance to meet everyone. Bill, you've been a real hero of mine. Thank you. And so I want to just talk about Apollo and give you a rundown of really what a mission, what a typical Apollo mission was. And I also have enjoyed the presentations of my fellow astronauts that have been on board. I didn't realize you were such a businessman after your career as an astronaut. So anyway, thank you for coming, everybody. I hope you learned something. How many of you were born after 1972? Would you raise your hand? Okay, y'all weren't even born when this happened, so but it really did. We really did go to the moon, and the evidence is overwhelming that we actually did land on the moon. And if anybody wants to argue with me, I'll be happy to do that after my presentation. But I can truthfully say that we landed on the moon 6 times. There was 20 years or so ago, there was a big hoorah about did we really land on the moon, and I was on NBC, I guess it was one of the morning shows, and I think it's Katie Couric. Anyway, it was, I said to this hostess, I said, if we faked it, why did we fake it 9 times? If you're going to fake something, do it once and shut up. But we went 9 times to the moon. We did 6 landings, so there were 12 of us that walked on the moon. I happened to be the youngest that walked on the moon, and I was 36, 4 months the youngest. Jack Schmidt was also 36, but he was born in July. I was born in October, so I had him by 4 months. And So now here we are, years later. I'm now 89, and I'm still the youngest guy that walked on the moon. So, so I hopefully Artemis is going to, before I pass on, Artemis is going to break that record. So anyway, each Apollo mission had 3 crew. And this is our crew, the prime crew of Apollo 16. We had 2 of us had been backup on Apollo 13, but let's see here if I can get this thing to work here. Ken Mattingly here had been supposed to be on Apollo 13, but I caught the measles a week before the flight, and he'd never had the measles, so they kicked him off the flight. And Jack Schweikert, who we had trained with, took his place. So Ken came back on our flight, and so he was the command module pilot, and it was his first mission. John Young was the commander of the mission. It was his 6th mission. Yeah, 6th mission. He'd flown 2 Gemini. This was his 2nd Apollo, and he went on to fly 2 shuttles. He's the only astronaut that flew 3 different kind of spacecraft in his career. Ken died a few years ago. John died before Ken, so I'm the only one left of this crew. And there I am at 36 years old over there, and so we had a great time. We were training, and then Apollo 13 blew up, and so they had to fix that, and that extended our launch from early 70 into 1972. So we lifted off in in April 1972, and on the hopefully the 5th landing on the lunar surface. There were, as I said, 6 landings. Each crew had 2 landings. Somebody explained yesterday that we had 27 seats to the moon, 9 missions, but 3 guys went twice. So really only 24 of the 42 astronauts that were in training at that point got to go to the moon. I consider myself very, very fortunate. I had worked as a not backup crew, but support crew for Apollo 10, and I was in mission control when Apollo 10 started their descent, simulated descent. Well, it wasn't simulated. We actually started down, but the spacecraft couldn't land because of weights and other things. So they had to, it was planned just to abort the descent and come back up into orbit. And so I was Capcom during that phase of the mission, with activation of spacecraft, manning of it, getting it ready to go, and was there doing the initial phases of the descent and the abort back into orbit. And so after that, we had 2 months to get ready to fly Apollo 11, which would be our first attempt at landing on the moon. And things we were really working hard to get everybody ready to go and simulated and getting everything coordinated. So Neil Armstrong had invited me to speak, not speak, but to be the Capcom, which if you don't know what Capcom stands for, it's Capsule Communicator. It's the only person in mission control that actually has the authority to talk directly to the crew. It's always an astronaut. And so I was asked by Neil to do the same deal on Apollo 11 as I did on Apollo 10, which was a big honor for me. I wasn't supposed to be involved with that flight, but I got asked by Neil, and so we had a successful landing. Of course, you all remember that, and one of the one of the doubters, when you remember Neil walking down the ladder, and you see his picture, TV pictures, him coming down the ladder, and so the doubters of the mission says, well, who took his picture? That was done in some stage somewhere, and they had a camera taking his picture, and that wasn't what happened. As Neil came down the ladder, he pulled a handle on the right side of the ladder and deployed what we call the MESA, Modular Equipment Storage Assembly, and in there was the camera. And so when that deployed, the camera came on and was pointed right at the steps. So it wasn't a fake descent. It really did happen because NASA thought to put a camera to see the first steps on the moon in real time. So they had a very successful mission. Then I was on the backup for Apollo 13. Then I was prime crew for Apollo 16. And that was between 13 flew, and by the time we flew was 2 years, almost a little over 2 years. And because we had to fix the spacecraft from Apollo 13. So John and I trained for about 2 years, and Ken Mattingly was now on our crew, and we started training, and we were thoroughly prepared when we got ready to launch. And all the Apollo missions launched on the Saturn V. This was the biggest rocket ever launched at the time. It was 110 meters tall. It was 10 meters in diameter, and it weighed 3 million kilos at liftoff. And there were 5 engines pushing with 3.7 million kilos of thrust. And so you had 3.7 pushing 3. And so it was very slow lifting off, but shaking like crazy from side to side. There were the 5 big engines at the bottom down there of the rocket moved to control its trajectory. And when they moved, that vibration went up the spacecraft, went up the stack, and when it got to the spacecraft, it was a pretty intense vibration. It wasn't a pogo up and down, but a vibration from side to side. And if you wondered what we were thinking about during this 2 hours in the spacecraft before we lifted off, it was keep counting, keep counting. I don't want to abort. Keep counting. Please keep counting. Because if you had 4 hours to get off, and if you didn't get off in that 4 hours, then you had to wait another month. And after that month, during that month, you could have an airplane, kill yourself in an airplane crash or a car crash or get sick or whatever, and you'd lose your chance. So everybody wanted to get off within the 4-hour window. And so we did, and we did and so here we are, liftoff, and we're in the, let's see if I can get this thing working right. Okay, there we go. So we were in the in the spacecraft up here, and this thing, when we had tower clear, control shifted to mission control. And we were shaking like crazy. The windows were covered over, so you couldn't see out of side at this point. And you didn't have any noise. There was no noise from the engines. That was all going sideways. And what we experienced was this vibration. Back to the liftoff. It took 8 seconds to clear the launch tower, and then control went to mission control in Houston, and we went started in the orbit. For let's see, it was like 3 minutes later we were staging, and the first stage shut down, and in that 2 minutes and 40 seconds of the first 3 minutes and 40 seconds of the first stage, we burned up 2 million kilos of fuel. So well over half the weight of the vehicle was gone after 2 minutes and 40 seconds or so. It was a real ride. A minute later, we jettisoned let's see here. We jettisoned this part up here, that spike. That was the launch escape system, and we jettisoned that. And when we jettisoned that, it pulled off the cover over the window so you could see outside for the first time. And we were going in what we called heads down, so the windows were here, and I was looking at this beautiful Atlantic Ocean, and then it faded into the blackness, faded into the light blue of the sky, into the blackness of space, all in the window about a foot across. And so it was really spectacular. This is a view, this is about, we're on our way to the moon. We circled the Earth 1.5 times, and over Australia, we left Earth orbit on a ascending trajectory. We had launched at a 26-degree incline. So the orbit went from 26 north to 26 south, or maybe 28. I don't remember exactly. But what you're seeing here now, of course, is the, oh shoot, God, dadgummit. What you're seeing here is the, let's see if I can get it on there. Yeah, there we go. This is the North Pole down across the U.S. This is the Baja California right here, and then California, then the Rocky Mountains, the southwestern United States, down across Mexico, Central America, into this area, and in the northern part of South America down here. And there's this beautiful jewel of blue and white and brown just hung up in the blackness of space. And everywhere else you looked was black. You could see the sun, of course, but that's about it. And the moon was also visible. But there was the Earth just suspended out there upon nothing. It was a breathtaking view we had. This is just a map of where the Apollo landed. The red are Russians. The pale green are the surveyor, and the dark green triangles are the Apollo landings. Okay, come on, guys. Yeah. Neil Armstrong landed at this point. We landed right down here, and between Neil on the Maury and us in the Lunar Highlands, there was 8,000 feet, almost 2,500 meters of altitude change. The farthest west was Apollo 12. Then you had Apollo 14. And then the farthest north was Apollo 15, and the farthest east was the last flight was Apollo 17. Every flight landed on the Maury except for us, and we were the only flight to land in what's called the Mountains of the Moon, or the Highlands, Lunar Highlands. The other triangles are just other missions that came up later on. We're in lunar orbit now, and we manned a lunar the limb, and we just separated from the command module, and Mattingly took this picture of us. We had oh shoot, dadgummit. I'll figure this thing out in a minute. Yeah. So we had this. This is the lunar module. Mattingly took the pictures. At the top of the picture, you see some long probes. Those were electrical probes, and when they touched the moon, it turned on a light. It said contact, and when the light came on, you shut the engine down. the engine nozzle was really big, and if it was hanging down, you can see it right below the yeah, uh, right in here was an engine nozzle, and so as you came down, you were blowing moon dust everywhere, and so you wanted to shut down before you touched down because. And so when the probes hit the ground, the light came on, you shut down because you didn't want to land with the engine burning and plug up in a big rock. It would blow up, which would spoil your whole day, of course. And so that was the procedure. And okay, this is our landing. We landed in a place called the Descartes Highlands. And this is what a moon mountain looks like. It's all rounded off, and the surface is mostly shades of gray. This mountain here that you see is we called it Stone Mountain. It reminded us of Stone Mountain in Atlanta. And on the second excursion, we climbed in our car up to this point right here, which is about 100 meters above, 100 to 300 feet above where we had landed out here on the valley. And all the major features of the moon have been rounded off by meteorite impact. There is no atmosphere on the moon, and so you have to have your spacesuit and your integrity of the suits to keep you alive. And also, since there's no atmosphere, as the meteors come in and hit the moon, they create the craters and they sort of round off all of the stuff of the lunar surface. Again, I made a mistake. Okay. Looking out of John's window on the left, you see the shadow of the lunar module. We landed with the sun at about a 15-degree angle, so we had good shadows out in front of us, which we used to judge the slope. As the shadow came in, you could use it plus the shades of gray to judge the slope. If it was bright gray, it was tilted towards you. If it was dark gray, it was tilted away from you. And so John made the initial decision to where to land. I was talking him down with rate of descent, forward velocity, lateral velocity, and we had a profile and that we used to stay on board. The computer would land you automatically, but it didn't know whether it was landing on the side of a mountain or flat. So we always took over before we touched down so that we made sure we landed on the thing that was most reasonably level. So looking out to the west, you see the blackness of the sky, and very, very bright. The sun moves about 1 degree every 2 hours, so we were on the moon for 72 hours, and the sun was still back in the eastern sky, but it's getting brighter and brighter and brighter. The shadows were getting shorter and shorter, of course. The temperature on the moon when we landed was estimated to be 85 degrees Fahrenheit. When we left, it was probably over 200 Fahrenheit. So as the sun gets higher, the surface gets hotter. But your suit protects you from that. The problem in an Apollo spacesuit is you get hot inside. It's body heat that you worry about. And so we had a liquid cool garment that had tubes running through it, filled with water, and you plug that onto the inside of the suit, and it took a hose from the backpack or the life support system, plugged it into the front side, and then you could turn on a little pump, and you pumped water through these little tubes like a car radiator pumps water through an engine, and it would pick up the body heat and take take it all back to the backpack or the life support system and hit a sublimator, and it would flash it all off into steam. We were really excited. We were 6 hours late landing due to a problem with the other spacecraft. And so we were so excited about finally getting here. We're on the moon. We're on the moon. And so we're describing every rock that you look outside and telling Houston what we're seeing. And we didn't have the TV camera at this point, so they were doing a observational by just our voices. And the flight plan had us to put on our backpacks, power down the spacecraft, and go outside. But since we were 6 hours late landing, they changed the flight plan. And he says, take off your suits, guys, put up your hammocks, and go to sleep. Now, can you imagine going to sleep 4 hours after you land on the moon? Man, we were like two little kids at Christmas, you know, staring out the window. And so I said, well, okay, we had to obey. So we took off our suits and put up these hammocks. And I was on the radio, so I had this little Snoopy hat on. And John was in a hammock that went from fore to aft above me, about 4 feet off the floor. And I was along the floor, port to starboard, and that was where I was sleeping. And finally, after about 4 hours, I called Mission Control and said, I'm not getting any sleep. And I said, I'm going to take a sleeping pill. So I broke open the medical kit and took a sleeping pill and got about 3 hours, maybe 4 hours of sleep. But after that, being in a spacesuit outside on the moon was really hard, not hard work, but exhausting work. And once we got back inside after that, we took our suits off, put up our hammocks, and we were out. It was really easy. Okay, let's go on here. This is Stone Mountain that I described before. We actually went, let's see. Oh, shoot. God bless it. I should have practiced this before okay, so now we're on the moon, and we got suited up. It took about 3 hours to get ready to get outside, make sure everything was working right. And so this is John. I put up the flag. John, we deployed the rover. The rover was an electric car, and it was 5 feet wide and 10 feet long, but the place they had it on the spacecraft was only 5 feet by 5 feet. So the rover was built in 3 sections. The front section, the wheels came in like landing gear on an airplane. It folded over on the center section. The rear wheels came in like a landing gear, and it came over. So you had 4 tires bumping up. So now the rover was 5 by 5, and they just bolted it to the outside of the spacecraft. And then when we got there, we had John pulled a handle that released the top part, and then I got on my side, and he got on one side, and we just started pulling these cable pulleys, and we just jacked it out. And when it got out at 45 degrees, all the pins pulled, and it just flopped open, like deploying landing gear on an airplane. And so now we got our car, and we get it onto the surface, and it was pointed underneath the car. So John and I, we just got up and picked it up and walked off with the car. So it weighed 80 pounds up on the moon. So it was easy to move around, but it wasn't so hard. It was hard to get in, because now you're in a suit and you got this car with a seat, and if this is the front of the car, I was on the right side, the passenger side. I was the navigator. John drove the car. And so I just reached in like this and gave a little jump, and I pulled in, sound, plop, I'm on the seat. But I'm straight like this, so you had to pull your seatbelt in and jack yourself in would pull you back into the seat so you could really see straight forward. It was fun riding a car. It was, John was like an Indy driver, man. pedal to the metal, you know, and we were off. The controller was between the seats, and when he pushed forward, he went forward. When he pulled back, he put on the brakes. He'd flip a switch, he'd push forward and go backwards. So we could go reverse, we could go forward, and it had four-wheel steering and four-wheel drive, so you could steer with the front wheels and the rear wheels, which made it highly maneuverable. And once we got in, we strapped in, as I said, and my job was to navigate. And I had a set of maps that says, okay, go 270 for 1.2 kilometers, turn left to 240, and go another 2 kilometers, and there's your objective. Well, it works pretty good if you land close to where the maps started from. So, and we did. We were probably within 200 meters of the landing spot, and a desired landing spot. So our maps worked, and as we checked out everything, we put the flag up, and some people say, well, the flag's waving when there's no atmosphere on the moon. Well, the flag's not waving. It's got a curtain rod holding it out, and I pulled it out to try to get the wrinkles out, and it had been vacuum packed for 6 months, and I couldn't get the wrinkles out of it, so I just left it like it was. And so we each saluted. This is me saluting the flag, and then John gave a big jump. He jumped about 3 feet off the moon while he saluted. And if you look at the wrinkles, 72 hours later, I took another picture, and it was the same wrinkles. So it was certainly not the wind of the moon blowing the flag around. So we took our excursion. We did a, here's John operating the antenna on the rover. Let's see here. Here's a TV camera. We had to get this antenna pointed up at the rover. Up at the Earth, which was right overhead from where we were. So we never saw the Earth. You look up and you're looking at the top of your helmet. So the Earth was where we were was directly overhead and remained there. So the only time I remember seeing the Earth is when I fell over backwards, and oh, there it is, right out there. And so this is the front of the rover. Here's a TV camera, as I said, the antenna, another antenna here, a set of maps, a camera, an instrument panel, controller was here, and on the back end we had a whole bunch of tools to help us with our experiments in collecting rocks. The tires were made out of wire, and so as you drove, they filled up with dust. The moon had there's no organic material on the moon, so you're just walking on pulverized rock, and it's very, very fine like powder. So as you walk, you compress the soil a little bit, but you never sink in more than just a couple of inches at the most. And but when I had a shovel and I started digging a trench, and I dug down 3 feet, and it was still same dust. It was basically all the same. I drilled a hole into the moon and pulled it back out, and so it was 10 feet deep, and the dust was still 10 feet deep, but you didn't sink into it. That was a big debate before we landed on the moon, because the 3 billion years old, it's going to be 3,000 foot of dust up there, and you're going to sink out of sight. And that was a concern for NASA. So we sent the surveyor, and landed a survey and turned it on, and there that little beauty was sitting right on the surface. So we had confidence that the lunar module was going to do the same because the bearing pressures on the surveyor were the same as on the lunar module. So we had confidence. So this was our beginning of the, wrong way. This is our lunar module, back in the back, back in the back was a storage assembly where all of our experiment package was stowed, and I had to get it off also with a plutonium radioactive rod to power this experiments package. You can see just the blackness of space. It's very, very sharp. You could see all the way to the horizon, of course, with no problem with visibility. The surface was rolling. You can see little rocks around on the surface, but later on, as I cycle through here, here I am on the edge of Plum Crater, and this crater is about 45 feet, 40 yards across. It was real steep. If I'd have slipped and fell in that crater, I was trapped. There was no getting out. So you can see, well, it's hard to see, but you see we walked way around here on that side to see to get to this for do experiments packages. Not experiments, but collecting of rocks and soil samples. This is a picture looking off to the west. It'd be southwest. By the way, there's no magnetic field on the moon, so how do you judge direction? Well, the sun. We just said the sun was always west, and so we had a gyro, and we rolled a gyro to 270. Was underneath the lubber line, and that was our direction. And then we had a odometer. If I didn't say that, we had an odometer on the rear wheel that gave us distance in kilometers. We had a little instrument. This little instrument was called a gnomon, and it took pictures, and it gave vertical, and it gave the shadow, the different colors of gray. So the geologist could then look at the pictures and judge the angles and all of those things. The little X's here were on the film. Well, it was a plate on this camera right here. We had two of these Hasselblad cameras, and you just click, click, click with your finger. And we learned how to, we didn't have any viewfinders, so we had to learn how to move the camera around like that, so what we were taking was what we wanted to take. And we practice and practice and practice with bending over, up, back, right, left, and all that stuff. And so we got pretty good at it. We took about 2,500 pictures while we were on the moon. This is actually John is in this. The red stripe guy was the commander, and he was. This is hard to say. So you could always tell who he was because he had the red stripes on his pants down here and on his helmet, and I didn't have any red stripes. So, hey, there's Charlie Duke. He just fell down, and. So, which I did a lot, and my balance wasn't. John's balance was fantastic. Mine was sort of so-so, going the wrong way. Excuse me. This picture was taken on the second excursion, and we had climbed Stone Mountain in our car, and we were about 100 meters, 300 feet or so above where we had landed, and the landing place was out in here, and you could actually see it, the lunar module out there. And the third day, we went over to the north here and explored a big crater called North Ray Crater. I'm going to hustle through these here. I wanted so most of them backwards. Oh, okay, now we're on the third day. And this is a big crater to the left of us. It's 300 yards, about 500 feet deep. And we got as close as we could, and we could not see the bottom. And it was the freshest crater and that we visited. The big mountain in the background is called, we called it Smoky Mountains. And that was beyond our objective. We couldn't go that far, which was about 6 or 7 miles away. But up on the moon, it's the difficult judging distance because you're looking at objects you've never seen before. And so is that a big rock far away, or is that a little rock closer in? No telephone poles, no trees, no anything to give you a sense of scale. And so this rock, that big one in the background there, which was on the rim of the crater, I said to, and this, I'm taking John's picture here, and I said, John, let's go look at that rock. He says, too far away. Oh, come on, John, it's just over there. And so I talked him into it. So we started jogging, and the more, and when I say jog, it was like Frankenstein, you know, running stiff-legged. And we got over there, and it was, I mean, this rock was 40 feet tall and about 60 feet wide, and I'm standing there with this little hammer, and you know, how did I get? And I couldn't. I sort of twist and whanged, and I got a chunk about the size of a grapefruit, and so I did that a couple of times, and we sampled the house rock, we called it, and then we had to walk back, and so it was an exhausting trip, but we ended up. Oh crap. This is what house rock looked like up close, and so towards the end, I got permission to take this picture of my family to the moon, and one of the last things I did was drop that picture onto the moon, and it's the only family picture that got to the moon, and the young guy in the red shirt's here now. He's Tom. He's a F-16 pilot and a Delta pilot. And so if you want a good pilot to take you to Europe, he's the guy out of JFK. Well, the surface of the moon was about just well over 100 degrees centigrade at this point. And so you can see the picture started curling up right away. And it didn't last very long, but it lasted long enough for me to drop to take a picture. Then I left a coin. The Air Force gave me a coin celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Air Force, which was in 1972. And I was the only Air Force officer to go to the moon that year. So I asked the Chief of Staff, could I take something to leave on the moon, say happy birthday Air Force. So they sent me these little coins, and one I had two. One I left on the moon, and one I brought back, and which is now in a museum, I think, at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. So, wrong way again. We left the flag, we left the rover, we left the experiments package, we left all of our backpacks, 2 sacks of trash, I'm sorry to say, but we kicked it out the front door, and so we had a big fight with Mission Control discussion. Let me put it that way. They said, "You're overweight. You got to throw some rocks out." I said, "We ain't throwing any rocks out, Houston. We worked hard collecting these rocks." So they relented, and we lifted off with our whole suite of rocks. I think we got 298 kilos. So it was a couple of 100 pounds of rocks that we brought back. The last 3 missions of Apollo lasted 3 days each, and everybody had over 200 pounds of moon rock. So well over 600 pounds of moon rocks from the last 3 missions. So we lifted off, and John parked the car, and this is the last view he had of the lunar module and the car. And today, now here we are back in orbit. We lifted off, which was really a great ride back in orbit. And it took us an hour to rendezvous, and this was then the final was splashdown in the South Pacific, and we had a safe landing within a couple of miles of our intended splashdown point. And there was a procedure to jettison the parachute. The first thing was when we hit the water, I was to press a circuit breaker in next to my right knee. And then Mattingly on the other side, when that circuit breaker went in, I said, "It's in," and he would flip a switch and the parachutes would jettison. So I'm up on my elbows looking out the window and watching the helicopters fly by. And Mattingly's over on the left side counting down the altitude, 600, 500, 400. And I'm pumped. Well, when he gets to 100, I'm going to put my head back. And when he got to 100, we hit the water. Whang! And my head went back like that, and I hit my seat. We weren't in our suits at the time. So I hit my head on the bar of the suit, and I was a little stunned. And finally, circuit breaker. So I reached down and pushed in the circuit breaker. By the time I got it in, the wind had flipped us over. Now we're upside down, hanging on, looking underwater, and so I got the circuit breaker in, and Mattingly then flipped the switch to jettison the parachutes, and then we turned on a pump that pumped air into these 3 balloons, which are underwater, and once they inflated, it flipped us right back over, and we were bobbing up right side up, and then the Navy could come on and get us out of here. So we did not have any quarantine. There were no moon bugs, and so they said, "We don't need to quarantine you after the flight, but we're going to quarantine you before the flight because you got the measles, Charlie, and so we don't want anybody getting sick before the flight." So anyway, mission complete. That was the 5th landing. We had one more. Let's see. We were in April, and then Apollo 17 went off in December of 1972. NASA canceled. Apollo was so successful, NASA canceled the last 3 missions, which was a disappointment, of course, to the astronaut office. But it was a tribute to the quality of work and the reliability of the Apollo systems and the experiments packages. So, and the packages that we left kept running for 5 years or so, and finally said they were overloaded with data, and they just shut them down. And so they're still there. Batteries are all gone now, of course. But so if you want an $8 million car with a dead battery, I can tell you exactly where to go. And so I hope you enjoyed this presentation of Apollo. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have, please, it's question time. So you're going to have to, I'm one step ahead of a cochlear implant, so you can imagine how bad my hearing is. So if you speak loud, I'll probably understand you. If not, somebody will interpret for me.
We
So
have an
is
audience mic as well.
Anybody got any questions? Yeah. Yeah, Bill.
What did you base your calculation on where you would land?
We had a map. We had an X marks the spot.
Why would they choose
Uh,
that particular?
it was because it was in the mountains of the moon, and we were at the Lunar Highlands, they called it, and we were the only flight to land in the mountains of the moon. And the reason they picked this big valley was because they expected two volcanic flows to meet together, and we were to sample back and forth across those flows. It turned out there were no volcanics up there, so they was shocked. But I can't say this for sure, but we'd spent 6 years in geology, and we were well trained, and I think we were describing these rocks, and the rocks weren't supposed to be that way. And I got a hint later on that our geology team said, these dumbasses, we've wasted 6 years on, they're not seeing it right. But then they got the clue that, hey, we were on to something. And so it turned out to be an excellent landing site for the one of the only mission that went to the mountains of the moon. And the rest were all on the Mare, which is the dark areas. The only input we had was the geologists and management said, can you land there? Yeah, we can land here. Who's going to say you can't land here? Of course we can land there. And so we landed there, and it turned out that the rocks were different, but they were excited because they'd never seen any moon rocks like this come home. Next question. Yes, sir.
Based on the technology back then, I mean the incredible technology that you had, why do you think it's taking the new explorations that are going to occur? Why are they sending unmanned vehicles to the moon before the manned vehicles? I mean, wouldn't all your knowledge and technology eliminate having to do that now?
First off, they're going to a totally different part of the moon. They're landing on the South Pole region. And on the South Pole, the sun never gets above 2 degrees above the horizon. So you have really, really deep shadows and very bright sunlight. And it's very rough down there. There's hills and craters, deep craters and all. And so our technology that we had was manual control. You could land automatically, but it didn't know what you were landing on, and so we took over to land. And so the Artemis is, they've got more cameras, they've got more instruments to tell them exactly where they are, and so they will be able to land automatically. But I'm not so convinced that we're not going to end up landing manually. But the idea is to land automatically, and you got more systems and sensors and ways to know exactly where you are. And so hopefully it's all going to work. I've been in the simulator and watched the landing, and it's amazing the information that you get from the systems that we didn't have any clue were even going to be in the future. It's been 50 years because after Apollo, as I said, was so successful, they canceled the last 3 missions and put the money on the space shuttle. And space shuttle was a 30-year program. He flew one of the shuttle's missions, and they did a good job. Well, that used all the budget up for flight, manned flight. And then the next program came along, and that was the space station. So with the shuttle flights and others, they started building this space station. So all of manned flight budget went into these 2 programs, which have been extended now. There's another 20 years probably, maybe not quite 20 years, for the space station. So all of that was the budget for all of manned flight, those programs. So nobody thought about going to the moon again. President H.W. Bush had the Artemis program, and it was a return to the moon. But that was mostly canceled except for the lander part. And no, the command, what we call the command module, which would take you to the moon. And that's still going. And now we've got a new lander that's automated, but the crew, I'm sure, can still take over. So anyway, we're back now going Artemis, and we're supposed to be landing first cruise, 26 or so, I think, 2026. So we're just a couple of years away. So I'm excited. Hopefully I'll still be here, and when I see somebody else landing on the moon. The crews are in training, and I think there's four. Is four in the crew? Four? Yeah. So there's four in the crew, and I don't know how many are going to get out, but the lander's huge. You saw my little lander. The new one's 30 meters tall, over 100 feet, and they're up at the top, and the thing lands. It looks like a big stovepipe to me, and so they'll be landing, and then a rod goes out, and an elevator they'll man up and get in this elevator and lower themselves to the moon on an elevator. And right now, the first manned missions are going to be not too long, but eventually the idea is to build a space station or a moon base on the moon, similar to what we have on Antarctica down here. We didn't get to see it, of course, but there are stations all over Antarctica in this hostile environment, and so we're going to have something like that on the moon. And I think it's going to be very valuable to learn how to manufacture, learn how to live up there, and then there's an isotope of helium up on the moon that we don't have down here. If we can learn to extract that and bring it back, it's fissionable, and so you can burn it in a nuclear reactor, and there's no leftover radioactive debris decay. So there are some really important things that we can do on the moon. So hopefully we're going to learn. Yes, ma'am.
Are all of the countries sharing information with each other? Excuse me. Are all of the countries that are on the moon sharing information with each other?
Yes, they are. We have a big international consortium, and I don't know exactly. I know there's one piece that's going to is built by the Europeans, and I'm not so active with that part of it, but I know we're all working together to get the Artemis success. One more question, and we got a break. Way in the, yeah.
Bring it to you. Very quickly.
Well, first, I want to thank you, Charlie, because you've convinced me that we did land on the moon. I honestly don't think there are any people I know your age that could make something up like that if it wasn't real. So it's, in any case, thank you. My question has to do with people like myself, civilians. Bill, Chris, Audrey, and I had the opportunity to go to space as civilians on Blue Origin. And I wonder, when you look back, did you ever imagine that actual civilians, because I look at all the training you guys went through and prepared for this your whole life, and in our case, you inspired me. That's one of the reasons I ended up wanting to go to space. But how do you feel about this notion of civilians going after you all had to put in so much time and energy?
I'm very excited about civilians in space, and the Blue Origins and the SpaceX and all the other programs. They are really pushing the envelope, and I'm so excited about the success that these programs are having, not only giving civilians a chance to go up and see what it looks like on the edge of space, but also this the technology and the rapid response that we get from civilian space involvement through SpaceX and Blue Origin and others that are launching. There are several startup companies that I'm advising on that would all go be unmanned, but they're a cheap way to get into space, and they'll carry up maybe 1,000 kilograms of little satellites and stuff and spew them out all over. So there's some really great things coming down the road, and I believe Artemis is going to be a challenge, that first landing, I believe. So, but they're training, and I think they'll be prepared, and I just pray and wish them well, that it'll all go well, and this international cooperation will survive the stress of the next 10 years or so. I think by the end of the decade, we'll have somebody up there, maybe even sooner. Right now it's set for 2026. I'm not so sure about that, but I'm not involved with the planning, and so I can't give you the exact stuff, but I think it's going to be tremendous. I hope I'm still alive when they land, and surely they got to be less than 95 years old when they land. So I'll pass on the baton. Thank you a lot. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie, for that really... Oh, this one's off. This one's dead. Okay. Anyway, thank you, Charlie, for that inspiring speech.
Oh, by the way, I want to thank Daniel and Tristan for organizing this trip. And it's been really tremendous. So thank you, my friend.
It's an honor.
Yes, sir.
Another big round of applause, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
What's on the program later today? Oh. Huh? That's why you gave me the mic.
Well, I would like, if I may, to invite you all to share your photos, your memorable photos with Ann Curry. She'll be up later today, showing some of your photos, maybe asking some of you to come up and share your moments. So use that QR code there or the URL below. Some of people's phones have not been able to connect to it. If you cannot connect and you want to share a photo, please come see me at the back of the room during the lunch hour, and I'll grab your photo manually and add it to the presentation. So we'll be doing that soon.
So, yes, a couple things. At 12, we have a trivia. Invite everybody to go, have fun. And then later this afternoon, Ann Curry is going to do a recap. We have a little surprise. And then later this afternoon, we have a really deep conversation between Mr. Shatner and Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yes. Yes, it's called a rematch. It's actually, this time it's going to be Bill interviewing Neil. So Neil's going to have to behave and follow the lead by Bill. So anyway, 12, enjoy the lunchtime. Well, actually, trivia is right now. So we invite you to go to trivia. Oops, hold on.
Family. Did I? Okay, everybody, they're all over here. So,
No, cue the music.
bless you. Thank you.